Ah, finally, Adventurer, the insane engine that makes almost every deck better. And of course, I had to slam it in my Phantom Knights. This is actually how I qualified for the European Championship, or in America it would be considered like Nats. I qualified by getting a pretty solid placement in a regionals with Phantom Knights Brave. So this is probably the deck I've done the best with. Again, I've not done that many in real life big events, but this one, you know, pretty solid. Of course, OCG, a little bit different from TCG, and Master Duel a little bit different from that, but I think I did a pretty decent job of converting it, let's say, to this format. So we start off with Maxi because Maxi is absolutely broken. Then we have one Kagemucha Knight, basically because Phantom Knights are considered bricky, and that's just true. Like, Phantom Knights is a pretty bricky deck. I want to be able to have one more extender that I can search with Rhoda, especially when I already have a Boots. If you opened like Cloak, Boots, and you still have your Rhoda, or well, any of the PKs with Boots, you don't want your Rhoda to search a dead card. So it's pretty cool to be able to search your Kagemucha for that reason. Also, this just makes it so you have a slightly higher amount of extenders in the deck, because basically what you want to open every game is a Rite of a Remisier or a Water Enchantress or a Foolish, so any of the Brave token starters, together with two level 3s that, you know, can both be summoned. So that can be any of the PKs together with Boots, or any of the PKs together with a level 3 extender, or of course the Kagemucha. So Kagemucha is just one more, same thing with Tracker, by the way, and then you should be able to have full combo. Now, what do I consider full combo? Full combo is when you are able to sightlock your opponent twice. What do I mean by twice? It means that when your opponent opens Forbidden Droplet to stop your sightlock, you do not give a fuck. That is the standard I set. And this deck, if it has any PK name, except for, I believe, Stained Griefs, together with an extender, you got that. Now, the reason you got that so easily in this build is because of Graph and Seer. If you try to do this without Graph and Seer, you do not just have to open like Brave token plus PK plus extender. You would need to open Brave token, PK, extender, and then I think two more. AKA, you need to open the God Hand, and your opponent cannot have a single hand trap. Otherwise, you're not double sight locking. So for that reason, I'm running Graph and Seer. Graph and Seer are technically bricks. Graph and Seer are pretty hated for that reason once we have the Brave token engine out. However, I want to be able to sight lock my opponent and not die to Forbidden Droplets. For that reason, they're still in here. Why do you not die to Forbidden Droplets with these cards? Because they are essentially the best thing to send off Cherubini, and then are two bodies by themselves. Like, Graph Seer are two extenders just by playing them in the deck, and so that basically makes up for those missed extenders. So that's the way you double sight lock your opponent, just by playing these. If you don't play these, you're never double sight locking. Like, don't even dream about it. Just assume that one droplet ends your turn. Doesn't sound that great. Another really good thing about Graph and Seer is that they play through Lancia. So a lot of people, when this deck was considered best deck, started main decking Lancia to not die to PK, because when PK does their double sight lock, it's over, right? Like, if you don't get to use your extra and they have OTK on board just like that, it's over. So everyone was playing the Lancias, and basically if you were playing a PK deck without Graph and Seer, Lancia ended your turn, because all the PKs required banishing. However, if your opponent Lancias you, if you have Graph and Seer, you can still make a board. Will it be like incredible best thing ever? No, but the board will be good enough to, you know, stand against some of the better decks out there. Also, they don't die to Droll, which is another issue the Brave PK deck had, was that you go like Rite, and then you go Fateful Adventure, and then you go Fateful Adventure at the Wandering Griffin Rider before doing Draco back, because again, everyone knew this was like an insane deck, so they started playing Droll. So if you were to go Fateful Adventure, search Draco back, and they Droll you there, GG, it's over. But if you go Fateful Adventure, search Griffin Rider, and then you discard some other card, now you Griffin Rider, then you add your Draco back, or, you know, they do it right after the Griffin Rider, they Droll you, so you can't Draco back anymore. Now you could play through Droll because of Graph and Seer. It doesn't matter that your Boots couldn't add a trap. It doesn't matter that Cloak couldn't add a Boots. None of that matters. Because Graph and Seer were two more extenders by themselves, you were still able to make a board. The best board? No, but a board for sure, which you couldn't do without these two. So for that reason, I'm a big advocate for playing Graph and Seer. Yes, they are bricks, but they are the only way you're not dying to Lancia, Droll, and Droplets. If you want to die to Lancia, Droll, and Droplets, have at it. Good luck, but I'm not. Next, we have one Ghost Ogre. So this is another hand trap. As you can see, this deck is known as Brick Knights. It's basically the reason you're not able to play a bunch of hand traps in this deck. For that reason, I needed to really thin it out, but I really wanted one Ogre because it's another target for Telly. So if you opened a really good hand, let's say you opened like Ride together with Cloak, Boots, you have full combo in those 3. If you then have teleport, because you're playing Graf Seer, you don't actually need to teleport to do the double side lock. Then you can just set the teleport, and then in your opponent's turn, you're able to special out the Ghost Ogre, which means now you are able to have one more form of interaction in your opponent's turn. Now, if you don't have the perfect hand, you just have, you know, Ride, Torn Scales, and the teleport. Now the teleport is just an extender. So by running the 1 Ogre, not only is it a really good hand trap right now because it nukes both Fluanderies and the Brave token stuff, it's also just a really good form of interaction. It's also an extender with teleport. So for that reason, really solid to just have at 1. Of course, if this was a different deck that didn't require so many pieces to combo off, you would run more Ogres, but this deck, as you can see, holy fuck, there's a lot of bricks. It's called Brick Knights for a reason, and it's at 44. You can't get this at 40 without making it just a mess because of all the garnets you're forced to run, including Graf and Seer. If you're not playing Graf and Seer, the deck becomes slightly less bricky, but you die to literally everything ever. This is also why this deck didn't perform as well in the TCG as people thought it would when they saw the OCG results. Next, we have Cloak at 2 and Boots at 3. Again, if you want all the explanations for Phantom Knights cards, sorry, but check out my older videos. I have a bunch of those out already explaining everything in high detail. Then we have 1 Gloves, because Gloves is insane. 2 Ash, because it stops Max C. I would like to have more, but again, you get into the Brick Knights issue. We do have 2 Called By as well, so we have 4 cards to not die to Max C. And if we don't draw those, too bad. I don't want to be bricking on my tuners. It's really hard, I know. Then we have Tracker, a level 3 extender, 1 Stained Greaves, double Torn Scales. The funny thing is, in this deck, you're not actually desperate for Torn Scales because you can't actually normal summon Torn Scales and get anything out of it. You cannot activate its effect when it's normal summoned because of your Brave token stuff. So instead, you're actually going to normal summon this, then get some extender, make your Cherubini, Graf Seer, and so forth. And then afterwards, you're going to special summon it back with its effect, and then you will activate its effect to get around the Brave token issue, basically. Then we have our 2 Water Enchantress. This card is basically a dual function in this deck. On the one hand, it's your Ride of a Remisier Searcher, but it's also a level 3 extender, so it's actually extra good in this deck. Then we have Celestial and Dasher, which is part of the DPE package, our Sight, because we're sight locking our opponent. Then we have our Griffin Rider, which is again part of that whole thing. Foolish Burial, extra good in this deck because on one hand, it can search, you know, Water Enchantress to get your whole thing going, but it can also dump one of your many PKs. So it can, for example, dump your Cloak, which then searches Boots, and then any other PK together, and you have full combo. So I do have to say, if you already had to Foolish into Cloak into Boots, you need 1 more extender on top in order to have full combo. Just so you know. Rhoda, because it searches any, usually it's gonna search Boots. Like, if you're not sure how to play the deck, 99% of the time, Rhoda searches Boots. Then we have 2 Fusion Destiny, which is your, you know, DPE stuff. We have a Rite of a Remisier, because Brave token, Draco Mag, Brave token, Fateful Adventure, Brave token, 2 E-Telly. Again, like I said, either it's gonna search your Tracker in order to just be an extender, or it's gonna search Ogre offensively in your opponent's turn, or defensively. Then we have double Called By in order to play through hand traps better. We have 3 Droplet, because we don't want to get sight locked by our opponent. Droplet is very, very good this format to not auto lose. Then we have 1 Wings, which is basically gonna be the thing you use to revive your Breaksword. So your main combo, the one where you do the double sight lock so that you don't die to a Droplets, you will Gloves the Wings to Graveyard. Then in your opponent's turn, you're gonna special summon out the Breaksword with that Wings. Breaksword is gonna go to the arrow Rusty is pointing to, and then the Rusty will activate, targeting the side and killing the side. If they then try to stop that by dropletsing you, you can activate Fog Blade, targeting your own DPE. DPE responds to the Fog Blade and not the droplets, killing itself plus the sight. And then the chain will resolve, meaning DPE will kill sight, and then Fog Blade will have no target, meaning it fizzles, and then the droplet will resolve, which will then, you know, stop your Rusty. Who the hell cares? Breaksword will no longer, you know, it will just have been summoned back, but the Rusty thing doesn't resolve. And then that chain ends, sight comes into graveyard, and then comes back. Now you could say, oh, but you could droplet on a different moment. Okay, so let's say once again, you have like your Rusty, you activate the Wings, bringing back the Breaksword, and your opponent doesn't droplet there. They just activate droplet when your Rusty already popped Breaksword, sight already died, sight comes back. Now your opponent tries to activate droplets on the side, so it's trying to stop the sight when it already came back. Once again, you can activate Fog Blade, targeting your own DPE. DPE responds to the Fog Blade instead of the droplets, targeting the sight, then gets rid of the sight, and now droplet no longer has its target on field, but sight will still resolve. Then once again, they're sight locked, GG. So that's how you do that. That's why Wings has to be in here. You want to be able to Wings your opponent and not not waste Fog Blades on that. Then we have our Shade Brigandine right here, which is just an extender that Boots can search. And then we have 2 Fog Blades, which is our negates. I believe in the original version of this deck that I qualified with, I was playing 3 Fog Blade, which better justified the wings over the third one. Then for the extra, we have DPE, Leviair, level 3 that also extends into other plays. Is actually really crucial sometimes in awkward hands. Like obviously if you open the nut and you're going to do your double side lock, easy, right? But sometimes you're going to have to Leviair in there. Then we have 2 break swords, really important. The reason is 1 break sword is going to be part of the combo, right? So just being able to do the poppity pop. But then sometimes after that, if your opponent is still doing something, you might still need to make the break sword. Also going second, you sometimes make your second break sword. And so being able to break sword, nuke shit, make a second break sword, or just attack with it, make a downer into Zeus and so forth, like a lot of back and forth games. Of course, sometimes you just side lock and it's over, but in back and forth games, you will need that second break sword pretty often. Also against back row decks and so forth, because as you can see, there's no back row hate in this deck. So you will have to meticulously break apart back row decks, which you will do together with the Draco back and that break sword and just manually destroy shit. Then we have our Downward Magician, which is really important to make our Zeus big. You have our Link Spider, which turns our Brave token into an effect monster to make our Verte more easily. It can also do that with the Shade Brigandine, by the way. Then we have our Almirage, which is important because in certain brick hands, we want to be able to make a Verte. So for example, let's say your hand is like just garbage, right? For example, it's just 1 Boots, okay? Normal summon Boots, turn it into Almirage, banish Boots, search Shade Brigandine, activate Shade Brigandine, turn it into Link Spider. Link Spider plus Almirage makes Verte, Verte makes DPE. That is a line that comes up. It might even be on top of a Ride of a Remeseer thing. Now, you could say, oh, but then the Ride of a Remeseer could also make the Dagda, and then you could sidelock your opponent. Sure, that's riskier, because then you basically have a sidelock, whereas if you just activate the Ride, do the thing, and make a DPE like I said, then you have a Griffin plus a DPE. It's up to you to try to go for the risky sidelock or the slightly less risky but slightly less good DPE plus Brave token. But at least, you know, if you just open Boots plus Brave token plus Trash, at least the Almirage gives you a line there. Next, we have Cherubini, which is part of every combo. We have IP, kind of a worse card. I didn't actually play this in my list because we had Dark in real life, but obviously this card has to be the replacement here because there's no Dark in this game. And we have Dagda for side locking, Verte for DPE, Unicorn for going second, because there's actually a line where any level 3s makes access code. Let's say you went like just the most basic. You have Gloves and you have Kagemucha Knight, right? So let's say you go normal summon Gloves, special Kagemucha Knight, together they make Cherubini. Cherubini sends Graph, special Seer. Seer and Cherubini make Unicorn. Then that brings back Cherubini. So now you have spun something with Unicorn. Cherubini plus Unicorn make access code. So just like that, by running Graph Seer, any level 3s makes access code. And of course, that wasn't the only things in your hand, right? There might be a Droplet in there. There might be a Brave token thing in there. There might be even more stuff that then, you know, leads to bigger boards. Sure. But just knowing that Cherubini going second makes access code by itself purely by running Graph and Seer is like really important knowledge to go second easily. Then we have IP. I usually don't make this. Like, this is the one flex spot in the deck. If you found something else you want to make, go ahead. It could be an Appaloosa or something. I don't know. I haven't really found anything I really want to play over this. But again, in the TCG version of the deck, this was a Dark. So Dagda, Verte, a Unicorn for going second. Then Rusty. Of course, Rusty is the only reason this deck exists. It's the everything. If you want more information, again, I have Phantom Knights videos on this channel you can check out. Then we have access code to OTK. So that is the Adventurer Phantom Knights deck. One of my favorite decks. It is pretty bricky sometimes. Personally, right now, very controversial. I would play this as a 50 card deck just to not have as many kind of bricky cards in the deck and have slightly more starters and extenders. Again, I know not many people want to see that necessarily, so I made this version for the YouTube channel instead. But still really solid. Again, with some variation of this deck, I did qualify, went pretty strong, so it should be solid for sure. Hope you found it interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.